I've already been to a lunch with a good number of you, and just interrupt whenever you have questions, and I'm happy to just be having a discussion, more so than me presenting all of these things. As a kind of a lead up, and as you might know, I'm here for Viva, Laurel's tomorrow, getting her PhD. I'm looking forward to it, so maybe more advanced, more like continuing beyond what I have done. So, some of this is a bit old, so I will go through kind of my own being a violinist before I got into technology. What I want to talk about is about, yeah, it goes beyond violins, but I'm focusing today on violins because I have done a bunch of way more experimental instruments and instrument interfaces as well, but it just gets too confusing to bring all of those in to a single talk. So, that's the general thing. How do we get expressivity augmented in some way, which of course is also the theme of NUN, New Interfaces for Musical Expression Conference, which I co-chair, not just chair, with Stefani Serafin coming in Copenhagen in May. Hope to see a lot of you there. But then I'll just focus today on the experimental hybrid between acoustic and electronic violins that I have been building. One is sitting on the table, which I will start off. It's a violin which was built as part of my PhD. So I have a few slides about that, and then I didn't bring the other violin because traveling between Copenhagen and London is quite easy, but carrying several instruments would get out of hand. Yeah, you already said all that, so I don't need to do that. I've also been working in industry a bit, and was also in Stein, which is a wonderful place, unfortunately, in Amsterdam, the studio for electro-instrumental music, but they've recently undergone, well, they've at least moved and maybe been downsized a bit.
Have they moved out?
I think they have moved. Same story with a lot of these. The funding these days in our area is not doing as well as it could be. So UC Berkeley, for example, Center for New Music and Audio Technologies, also is on the brink.
That's sad.
Yes, very sad. We have to do the best to support our field and represent it. Okay, so I mean, I played normal violin since I was like 5 or 6 years old. Then I got into electronics, and this was the first result of, or at least the first serious attempt at trying to augment the expressivity of the violin. So the focus is not on capturing, at least I have never focused on capturing traditional techniques of violin playing, but more about adding new techniques. So you keep the possibility of using traditional violin playing techniques in the traditional ways, with strings. Okay, it's not traditional in the sense that there's no acoustic body here, but you play those strings in the exact same way. Okay, there's 2 more of them, there's 6 strings in a violin, but you're using exactly the same sets of techniques, slightly extended. And then I extend, or whole new techniques as well, which might relate to the existing techniques like bow arm movements, but the bow might not even have to be on the string to use sensors that I have in this instrument. And this was actually, I showed it first in 2005 at the NIME conference more than 10 years ago now. It's kind of old history for me. And yeah, there's a lot of philosophy behind the kind of approach which is almost too scattered, trying to be the luthier, trying to be the performer, sometimes the composer, figuring out how to get the expression into something which is musically meaningful and has something which would go beyond just a single piece. It's always hard, though, of course, to have one instrument. And then I have loaned this out to several other performers, professional violinists, but then it's like I always want it back because I built it, right? It's like there's only one of them. That's the problem with such things. So, I mean, this is not like an equation or anything, so I have the squiggly things, but if you have, like, in the field of engineering, these 2 concepts, which of course are very related, accuracy and precision, there's something about the way that the musician needs to be able to interact, and I can talk about some specific examples on this instrument, which are, I think, going towards the subtlety and the nuance that's necessary to be expressive. And that's done through high bandwidth between human to the sensors that are interacting. For instance, there are optical audio pickups, which go well beyond, if you want them to, any audio rate we could hear as humans, but of course there's no point in that. They can sense, however, a high bandwidth of signal from the vibrating string, and also there's I'll talk about it later on the next slide, I think. There's some ultrasonic sensors, which are not about strings at all, they're just gestures to be played with extended techniques. And that's what I mean by the last part. Extended techniques beyond traditional violin techniques. Well, it's pretty well accepted. It takes, what, 10,000 hours, or, I mean, 5 or 10 years minimum to get at least some level of proficiency on any instrument. If you add a new technique, even if it's a fairly simple one, and you want to become, like, maybe not even virtuosic with that new technique, but just somehow be able to play it expressively musically, there's no free lunch. You got to practice. Unfortunate truth. So, okay, I will not go through all of these, but it's actually a rich field, surprisingly rich, especially on violins. Max Matthews himself, the late Max Matthews, was kind of one of the first people to introduce the idea of experimenting with electronic violins, and he used what he called bimorph piezo pickups, and it's like a piezo that has ceramic, I think it is, on both sides of it, so you can capture, instead of a single unimodal output signal, we have bimodal output signals. Then there's some kind of, this is called BOSSA, the Bode Center Speaker Array, which has moved completely away from traditional violin shapes, whereas this is played like a violin. Here there are something you can bow it, but it's like, okay, the body of the instrument is now a dodecahedron speaker rather than anything acoustic. Chris Chafe, he's developed what he called Chiletto, and he's using bow tracking with accelerometers on the bow, and also a Buchla, what was called the Lightning, I know, you can still buy it, but it's two wands that you can, a commercial MIDI controller interface are tracking positions of these two wands. He's using that to track his bow. And there has been many others. That's so many others. MIT Hyperviolin. That's two different versions of MIT's version of what they call the Hyperviolin. Joshua Bell played that one. Ani Kadhafi played that one. Just a whole history of rich exploration in this area. Okay, so in a little bit more detail, you can see that my optical violin pickups here are just a circuit board bridge. It's a standard FR4 piece of circuit board material, etched in the old-fashioned traditional way with the acid and all, and then you end up with the traces which have connections to optical elements. Each one of these, the white components, are infrared LEDs. This picture was taken, well, looking from the backside, but was taken with a fairly cheap digital camera, which doesn't have very good infrared light filtering, so you can actually see that purple haze. These are like really bright LEDs, actually. So they're creating a strong shadow, and as the string vibrates, the shadow is moving. Under each string is a pair of differential, just the same concept as an electric guitar using humbucker style pickups, which is removing, you take the signal from a differential pair of detectors. These are the optical sensors which just sense the movement of the string, in order to remove common, like for instance, light in the room. Things that come to both sensors at the same time can be removed. But you do get the differential signal, which is what you want, movement of the string. I have two ways of getting the signals off of those strings. You can see that individually, each pair of outputs has an audio signal. And there's actually, that picture doesn't show it, but there's a little plug here following Roland, which is a standards for guitar players. They call it the divided pickup. So if you play a Roland MIDI guitar, it's going to use this GK divided pickup thing. And that plug style is a 13-pin DIN connector, which is keeping all the independent analog audio output signals available if you want to use them. Do signal processing independently per string. And it's of course also just available like on standard guitar, quarter-inch output. Mono signal for all 6 strings. Okay, now I mentioned that this violin also has something with sonar. I didn't bring it with me, unfortunately, but this is an old Viking glove repurposed, and it has a ultrasound transmitter on the glove mounted here, pointing towards the violin if you're holding your arm in bowing position. On the violin itself, because the transmitter is here and the receiver is here, actually there's 3 of them in parallel, so you can get capturing distance between my hand with that glove on, in this direction, in the whole range of directions, distance between violin body and hand, in whichever direction you're holding your hand. So you could use it to capture the actual bowing while the bow's on the string, but I typically didn't use it that way. I typically would just either put the bow down or have control. I have some video clips later on showing how I would use this sort of sensor. But it's a very high bandwidth sensor. Well, actually it's only sending data at about 200 hertz to the computer, but its really high accuracy is a result of not doing the typical audio or ultrasound measuring method. If you've ever used ultrasound sensors before, the typical method is to use the reflection. You send a ping out and you wait for the reflection to come back. A little bit like submarines, sending a ping out, waiting. That's the same concept, but this is not reflection based because it's direct, right? The transmitter is on my hand, the receiver is there. that fundamentally I was just lucky in a sense, but it's fundamentally made a huge difference in the amount of accuracy. For example, I can't even hold still enough. It's definitely, I never quantified it exactly, but it's got to be like sub-millimeter accurate. Because if you put the glove on the table and set the violin on the table, you get an absolutely stable distance measure between the two. Like, it doesn't fluctuate at all. The minute I try to pick one of the two up, trying to hold my hand still, I can't hold still enough for it to, it's like, damn it, that must be like, I just can't hold still enough. Put it down again, okay. Clearly the measurement is that precise. And there's a bunch of other sensors. Well, this one's, I won't go through all of them. There's joysticks, sliders, spring-loaded, also a slider. A bunch of buttons up here. The video camera is not typically used, well, you could use the video output signal because it is just a video camera, but I typically used it as a sensor rather than a camera, so that it was even though I was looking out at the room and you could use that video for something, I would just do a simple optical flow with it. Like an optical mouse on your desk. It's doing optical flow on the desk, right? Well, you can do optical flow this way, out in the world. I mean, it might get confused if something moves in the world, but it otherwise works pretty damn well. Just to like track motion. I went up or I went down. I went this way or that way. Do an overall optical flow algorithm on the output of the video camera, and you've got motion. More detail on the glove. The only thing I didn't mention already, that's the transmitter. But it also has a simple 2-axis accelerometer on the glove, which this is old enough that was actually kind of state of the art to have 2 axes in a single accelerometer. Now everything is a 3. You can't get anything with 3-axis accelerometers, I don't think. Just about. And all the data that was from all these sensors, all the buttons, all the sliders and potentiometers. By the way, the spring-loaded, no longer spring-loaded joystick will stay where you put it, so that's nice for reasons. I won't go into detail, but they're mapped in the hardware, they're mapped various ways. So all that is coming across to this little receiver, which again I didn't bring with me, so I can't really demo all this. I transferred cases, sorry. My other case is too big to bring on the Ryan here. Anyway, and then I forgot. Some of it would have fit in this case, whatever. That's the receiver. It receives a little wireless sensor data being sent from the violin, plugs into a USB port of your computer, and shows up as human input device under the category of game controllers. So in fact, you can play quite with the violin. But the point is that everything works with HID. And everything is like, I mean by everything, you name it. You know, there's SuperCollider, Chuck, Pure Data, Max MSP. Okay, maybe everything is now going towards OSC, but it always has worked and continues to work with HID. So I don't think it was too bad of a choice to just say, okay, enumerate over the USB port as a USB HID device game controller protocol with many more axes than normally are associated with game controllers. So it still works pretty well, and of course, sometimes it's nice because those are well optimized drivers for latency, for reasons that gamers need. And if some other driver you were depending upon, say even the Arduino serial driver or something, hasn't been so well optimized, we could speak to somebody who knows way more about this than me, because it's been analyzed in last year's 9 paper. So that was like...
You'd be surprised how good a HID actually is in comparison, to be honest. I mean, well, we didn't measure HID specifically, but I did measure mouse clicks, which presumably is internally a HID thing.
It is, yes.
It was really fast, even though serial was really slow.
Precisely. So USB is not the bottleneck. It's the poorly written drivers in various USB classes. If you've ever looked at USB Chapter 9, the actual specification of the USB is off the deep end. There's submarine controllers. There's all sorts of... What? I don't know why people went. I think some engineer needed some more hours to be paid. And don't get me started. Okay. This is an example I like to show because, well, in honor of Max Matthews. But don't get your hopes up about getting... He was already in his 90s, I believe, then. So, and the point is that even though, and I have a quote in here somewhere with David Wessel's famous, there should be, as a musical instrument, no ceiling on virtuosity, but a low entry fee, meaning easy to start playing the instrument, but no ceiling on the virtuosity. So the point here is that I like to make, the violin is one of these things which actually has a pretty high entry fee. It's hard to learn to play the violin, and somebody who's in their 90s is not really going to be able to maintain the level of proficiency skill needed to make it sound good. So this is the clip. I'll play it very shortly, maybe not the whole thing. But he actually asked when he was trying this, whatever it was, 2006 or 7, and he did not want any effects. Like, I was ready to like hook it all up. I mean, at that point, I was performing myself with it, doing like, I mean, all the sensors activated. He's like, no, I just want to hear these pickups. That's what he wanted to hear. And no reverb, nothing. So it's just the raw sound of the pickups. Sorry? Okay, you get the idea. But the point is that you can hear all those subtleties and nuances in the playing, which is, in this case, a little bit hard to listen to, right? It's like, oh, yeah, you're like something. So, but that also means you have that as an option to when you've mastered it, and it's, yeah, it's got a high entry fee, the violin, but it is quite any violin, not just this one. But that means there's almost no ceiling on expressivity, right? You can really, really work on your skills until you'll never get to the point where you completely mastered it. It is that hard. So I think that makes it a good instrument, is what I'm saying. Here's some excerpts from me playing it, and I can play what I want to play. I'm no virtuoso, but I'll play a little bit of this one and then skip mostly to that one because this is just more of the sound of the strings again, primarily. This is an excerpt from Duet for Violin Violins that I made a piece where there is a section which is primarily based on the sound of the strings and then starts doing some processing and looping and stuff with the strings sounds. But this one, which you might be more interested in, is only sensors, a sensors-only section of the piece. Like, there's no, I might have sampled some of the string sounds, but I'm not even putting a bow on the string. So I guess the left one first, I think it plays. Okay, that goes on for a while. I won't subject you to that section of the piece. Too much more, but you can hear as you sample and then either loop or manipulate, do some granular synthesis, I believe, was happening there. And this is entirely sampled. So So there's various mappings going on there. I mean, I've been using several of the different push buttons out here. You can see the primary thing is this distance sensor with the ultrasonic measurement. And that's kind of like using that together with the accelerometer on here to control various parameters is directly driving a set of synthesizers, one for each button. So I can choose partly improvised, which one I wanted to play at any moment, even layer them and do so. Of course, you can push more than one button at once, of course. Now, I mean, this is personal, right? This is, for each of us, we have to decide what works, musically speaking. But, I mean, I have found that I have a need for that fluency. Like, I have an idea, and I want it to be without as much hindrance as possible. Musical idea has to be, like, realizable. Some system that allows me to get to the point where it's more intuitive. Because if I'm not doing that, then I can't really improvise, and I like improvising. So that's personal, but the expressivity somehow is needing that level of like, not just on the technological, actually primarily on the human side. On the there's no free lunch, as I said before. You got to practice. You got to get to the point where it's like, and the mappings can't just every single time you've done a new mapping, if it's always changing, if you're changing the mappings under your fingertips, then you never practiced enough, right? So you have to be careful, and like the mapping itself is a composition, and practice that particular composition. And I don't usually find that too much of the sonic diversity. Well, that example actually had quite a lot of sonic diversity, but I find that sometimes it's counterproductive because you just didn't practice it enough to have control of the level of control maybe isn't there yet. And I said mapping should be kind of considered as composition, for me anyway, where you take the gestures, what kind of articulation are they supposed to do on the music you're making, and of course, always, whether you're composing something which is just a taped piece, like, not going to be performed ever, or live improvisation, you got to think about the different time scales. Like, there's all the way from microseconds all the way through musical events at the seconds to the composition of a piece. And how does it work? How does it come together? What works for you as a musician, as a player? And lots of things can be considered. This was the next instrument I built. And interrupt any time there's questions. I mean, one can spend hours just talking about the last thing, the musical aspects. But I went on and I considered, okay, I actually did kind of miss the acoustic body, but I liked the idea of having the centers. And one thing that, even though this instrument is pretty self-contained, it just didn't have an acoustic body, which this has a minimalized, it is an acoustic body. In fact, there's an actuator inside there too, so you get a decent amount of sound out of this tiny little body. But it's also running the signal processing on a mobile device, in that case an iPod Touch, so that you don't have to have the laptop and the USB connected wireless receiver and all that stuff. Now, it limits you, right? Because you're no longer able to do all you can use the touchscreen as an interface, but I didn't have all the sensors and other things out here. The idea though, and actually this is a very similar name to a recent project we just started, which we might collaborate a bit on. But the idea is to use some sort of actual acoustic element of, not a traditional violin obviously, but something that's actually got a body, is resonating, and you feel it's actually primary feedback to do the tactile and to feel the instrument itself vibrating. The sound is actually secondary feedback, but here you can have either passive elements of sound where, if I don't even have the iPod Touch there at all, it's not going to be as loud as a normal acoustic violin, but it will make sound. It plays, in fact, it's kind of going back to more traditional things, only 4 strings, and you can play without anything attached to it, it will create sound. Or you can do the reactive things, which is about what we just saw some videos of, where sensor values are mapped to some sort of audio output, but in this case the sound will all come from the body of the violin itself, including electronically altered sounds, because there's a tactile sound transducer inside the body. Or you can do this kind of called mixed reality sound enhancement, which is of course just it's just an effects processor, right? You take the sound from the strings, run them through something, and you get augmenting the sound, the natural sound of the acoustic instrument with something run through an effects. These 2 slides are just comparing. So I have 3 kind of traits common to both of these 2 instruments. If I compare the 2 instruments that I have continued, and there's a third and kind of a fourth even instrument now. At any rate, these 2 were both hybrid instruments. You want to be able to play them traditionally in order to keep all the nuances, keep the techniques that people have learned by playing traditional instruments. Yet the gesture sensors are there to do some sort of unique, but still complementary to the existing set of techniques. Unique affordances when compared to traditional techniques to enhance expressivity. Both of them are trying to integrate these elements. Integrate both of these elements. Not just duct tape or Velcro something on an existing violin, but actually try to integrate them into a new instrument. And then when it comes to the one I just introduced, the fiddle as I call it, it is now completely a self-contained thing where it has its own onboard processing, and it is in and of itself the source of sound. That's somehow, it's not like a big deal, it's just like taking the amplifier and sticking it in an instrument, right? It will never be as good quality as a real amp, of course, so you're compromising a bit actually there too, but somehow having sound come from the instrument itself, maybe I'm just going backwards here, but it means something to me as a player. Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to build traditional violins, then you really have to do something craftsmanship, luthiership. Being a luthier is pretty advanced, and I'm not that. As you can see, it's very crude acoustics in terms of like the box and just held together with like standoffs for circuit boards. It's not a traditional violin body at all. It is not designed as an acoustic properly done thing. But its tone quality isn't any longer, if you're using the signal processing, determined by craftsmanship entirely. It is, but not to be 100%. So you can stick your DSP in there and then try to simulate either other acoustic bodies or sympathetic springs, all sorts of things. And just some design details. Yeah, there's some history there too. Dr. Carlene Hutchins has been building experimental violas and a whole series of, like, in between the usual sizes of violin, viola, cello, and all that. She has a whole series of instruments. We've seen her work. It's quite inspiring. Yeah. So that's I mentioned the tactile sound transducer. That's it. It's inside the body of the overtone fiddle. It's really just a voice coil from a loudspeaker. And even though purely acoustic without that, it's a fairly quiet violin, because you can see the body is not a really good acoustic thing. But with that thing, which can take, I think, 15 watts or something, doesn't sound like a lot, but then it's like, ow, turn the light down. It's 15 watts is enough to, it's right next to your ear, you know? You might have, if you play guitar amps that are like 15 watts, these old, like, they can get your attention. Now, because okay, I'll admit it, I was way too tempted to also just play with the left and right channels of output from the iPod Touch, right? Because I have a single actuator in the body of the instrument, but I don't want to just stick another actuator in the body of the instrument, and they might interfere with each other or whatever. It's like, so I built another body, which just kind of hangs under it, out of this stuff called dragon plate, which is really just carbon fiber plates with balsa wood in between, and it actually ends up being a really nice acoustic material, in my opinion. You can just buy it on dragonplate.com, I think, for hobby use usually. But it's a cool material if you design a simple box as I did, just with Helmholtz in mind, so you get the size. Well, you can't see the hole, but there's a properly designed Helmholtz resonator hole to match the acoustics of the traditional violin body. Under this, you just can't see the hole. And then the right channel goes to this, left channel goes to the internal actuator, and you can do. Well, now it's way too loud. But I should have brought that instrument. It's fun to play with. This is what I would typically then need to resort to instead of using HID data from this coming across to the laptop, because with this instrument you have the iPod Touch or some mobile device to do the audio, to do DSP. But if you want to control it with sensors, obviously the violin itself doesn't have all the extra sensors like this does. Well, then you can put something on the right hand again, and it's not actually as good as this one, because this is a ultrasonic transducer which measures transmit and receive through acoustic reflectivity. And then you get the kind of weirdness which comes with different materials having different acoustic reflectiveness. I mean, you pointed at curtains, it gets all noisy. You pointed at a nice hardwood wall, it is a clean signal. But this is all done as a little, I don't know. If you're really geeky, you might know this. ESP8266. It's a little board right there, side of your phone. And it's a Wi-Fi chip which is Arduino compatible, and then it spits out open source packets, which can directly be received by the iPod Touch. It doesn't look very finished, but it actually works really quite well. Because this little board, that's its antenna, it is a network. It's a Wi-Fi network. It shows that you can join its network as if it was a base station, when it's organic with the code that is running on there. And then you join its network, it samples the sensor data and screens it as open sound control packets directly to the phone, so you don't need to have a laptop involved at all. And then you get a measurement of that ultrasonic sensor directly into whatever it is. I mean, the prior picture with the phone on the overtone fiddle was showing you can compile super collector for the phone. You can also run PD patches in various apps. Super collector is a little bit, you can't just download it from the App Store. But I didn't port it. Other people have ported it to iOS, so it does in fact run if you're willing to compile it direct code. I'll go faster through some of this. Yeah, I think I said all of that. Yeah, of course it's fun, otherwise why would I do it? It's a very interesting musical challenge. Yeah. I like this one word right here because it applies not just to music, but also because everyday speech. If you're walking down the sidewalk, you talk to your friend, say hi, or you say hi. That inflection tells a hell of a lot about the mood they're in. And that's what you've got. Musically, you really want to be able to have that ability to preserve those inflections. Each note really matters, right? Was there a tiny bit of vibrato? Was there more or less emphasis at the beginning, or did the note swell? I mean, you need all that stuff there. And inflection is really important. So that was or not just for the violin series, but all the things that I've been doing over the years of trying to get at emancipation of this expressivity within the field of digital music. Because sometimes it's really like, well, I'm speaking to the choir here with touch keys and all. Piano, I love the instrument, but it's like, it's going to give you like, well, you can't start a note and then make this note get louder, can you? Like you can on a wind instrument or accordion. So this sort of like, let's get back within digital music to something that is expressive in the ways that analog or traditional instruments can be. And if you haven't seen some of this, this is a great more philosophy work, not even directly in our field, but the Singing Neanderthal, the origins of music, language, mind, and body, Stephen Mifflin. This is, again, we can spend hours just discussing this stuff, but this is actually these 5 traits, which he goes through it. I'll just if you're curious, read the book. Because those 5 traits are something you can really learn a lot or be inspired from when trying to design what sort of interface I want to add to a violin, or totally unrelated to violins, because as I said, I've done lots of other projects that are not related to violins too. But no matter what, you have to approach the problem with some sort of like, for me it has to be tangible. I don't want to just have like, wave my hands in the air, or okay, theremin is cool and all, but didn't they say that if you attach rubber bands to the theremin, you can learn how to play it much easier? Something tangible really, for me, it matters. You got to match it to your human perception of cognition, of course, and think about physical affordances, ergonomics, your own gestural proprioception, you know where your body is for proprioception, our own cognitive abilities, you know, magic number 7 plus or minus 2, the psychological intuition, which is like how musicianship comes into play here, and the whole bit about mapping being composition, both gesturally and over time. How much time do I have?
We've got the room at least through 5, so yeah.
But I want to leave some time for questions. Let me see how many slides I have left. Because this is now into theory, which I don't want to... that's not so many. I can finish those.
I think you got time.
Good. Okay, but this is actually, I'm not going to go deep into this because this was like that was a portion of my PhD's dissertation project, so I'm not going to go deep into it right now. It's just a whole framework for thinking about and designing, the space in which you design these things has to be considered from so many different angles. So I have developed my own kind of design space. And of course, it's those 3 areas combined. Music itself, the interface between human and the system that you're controlling, and the technology, all things have to come together. So we have all these new compelling methods for musical synthesis and effects, but most of the time you lack some way of controlling, or at least you have a way of controlling, but maybe it's a preset you're calling up or something. You lack the expressive control, the nuance and subtlety. And I had that on an earlier slide too. Yeah, and we could, Sergi Jorda, like there's a whole history of prior work here as well. And I mentioned this as well earlier too, which is the David Wessel and the idea of keeping a low entry fee on new interfaces, yet no ceiling on virtuosity. I personally think that's really hard to do. Great if you can have adaptive things that will follow along, but that's also a little bit troublesome. We can discuss it tomorrow. Will be fun, but it's just really hard to do that. Because how do you have, if you really want the low entry fee, well, I mean, the lowest entry fee is what, the CD player. Huge musical complexity output. The whole symphony is recorded prior to your hitting the play button. That's a low entry fee. I can hit play, so can you. But it's not a musical instrument. Nobody would ever call it that. So that's the problem, right? How do you get this low entry fee? Not maybe that low, but how do you keep the entry fee low enough people are not intimidated, and then keep it so that they can still spend, if they want, their whole lives working and playing on that very same instrument. Yeah, plays all these. In fact, effort is something I purposely put in sometimes. The opposite of the whole HCI, in the Chi community, there's like this idea of Fitts law and the measurement of efficiency of interfaces between human to computer input of various sorts. Mouse cursor placement on the screen, where do you put the menus to make it the most efficient, whatever. Sometimes purposely making it more difficult ends up being much more musically expressive. It's a design decision you have to make within that design space that I don't have time to lay out today. And then there's this kind of a continuum from when you're first learning an instrument, you're thinking about things very much. Your cognition is in play in order to control the motor muscles. Saying, how do I think about learning to play a guitar? Your hands don't know where the chords are yet, so you have to think a lot about, come on, finger, go where I tell you to biomechanical, where it becomes more modal. You have muscle memory, right? It starts to become that way. To, and this is going beyond human skills, right? This can mean software, adaptive algorithms, all sorts of generative systems, purely mechanical systems. We can't do that. But the interesting thing is somewhere between, not so much that's for beginners, right? Somewhere between these two things. What elements do we say are, what elements can we let the computer have control of and be purely mechanical? What elements do we want to keep control of as our biomechanical systems? Where do we draw the line? How do you combine those in the most interesting ways for future musical instruments? I mean, we can now, and that's what's the most unexplored even today. So I think there's a huge space still left to be explored. Yeah. More references. This is primarily those. Yeah. That's just a reference line. Go past it. And of course, all the technology. There's no way around it in today's world. You have to think about all the stuff that it takes to make all these devices at the level of detail to do it right. If you don't do it right, then you're not going to get the nuance and subtlety. You need to probably do your own microcontroller programming, probably do all your thinking about analog to digital conversion in a way that's going to keep the accuracy, precision that you need. That might require some analog signal conditioning, various types of sensors, communication protocols, all these things that come to play. Last but not least, the whole DSP world. Yeah, and then this framework, which I call MITDS, for the design space within music interface technology, is about this. Finding things for fluent tangible control and technologies that allow you to map into synthesis that is for composition work. And this is just an analogy to Darwinian theory, right? So original species of some musical instrument will have speciations along the way. I mean, it will happen whether or not we're doing it with technology. It happens naturally. Kind of stagnates in the orchestral things, but yeah, it still happens. Whether it's going to be actually a viable species, some speciation may or may not be viable, in the sense of thriving within some culture. That really depends on the level of widespread inspiration about, is there somebody who's such a virtuoso on this new instrument that in fact other people are I got to get one of those and play it, or even if they have to build it themselves and then play it. And of course availability, because that's I really wish that we lived in a magic world where I had a GitHub where somebody could fork this. Because I don't, I own it because I built it, but I would love the world to exist magically where this was just anybody who wants one can somehow either without so much effort build it themselves. Well, that's not the same as building code from GitHub. That's pretty easy if it's all set up to be compiled. But you know what I'm saying. It's availability, which is a fairly significant problem for hardware, especially for hardware versus software. And I also call it accessibility here. I don't mean accessibility in the sense of, I should have put availability up there. Because with the two violins that I talked about today, these are completely custom designs. So they're almost completely unavailable to other musicians. I've loaned them out, but that's not it's basically unavailable. It's also, even for my own use, the setup time. And that was one of my reasons to go to the fiddle, to go to self-contained natures of not even having to bring a laptop with and that kind of thing. It's I will probably actively use it more. I have been more actively using it. This one's currently lacking a string that broke. I have to put a new string on it because I more actively myself use things that are just like, take it out of the case and play. Okay, maybe the battery needs charging, but that's about it. Yeah, and one solution was, I'm still working, it's ongoing research actually. I mean, I wish that it was easier to do these things in the GitHub sense of like, here's the design files, go. But then I try to say, instead of whole design files, like you saw in the overtone fiddle, you have to like cut out the bass plate. It's a lot of work still. Here, you can just buy off-the-shelf things. Well, in the picture that's coming next, I think, you can buy off-the-shelf things, and hopefully requiring just minimal electronics knowledge for a do-it-yourself kind of hybrid violin, which is having loudspeakers on an electric violin platform, where you just buy the electric violin. This one I actually don't play much myself. I wish it was a standard platform, but it's too cheap, right? Because I bought the Chinese violin, it was like eBay special, $150, including the case and bow, I think. Is it the same one you guys use?
Sounds like it.
Yep.
It's just, I mean, it plays, but it's not. Yeah. There is some sort of like, there's something there that needs to be explored more, but I'm not totally sure where I'm going to in myself to go with this. Just think about how to expand the availability of these augmented instruments to players who would use them, who aren't going to be just doing research with them, but actually play them in musical contexts. And that's all I wanted to. I mean, I have developed this particular instrument. Now I have a version of it that's not based on the Chinese one. It's actually like a rootier made instrument, but then the cost goes back up. Availability goes when the cost is up. So, but I mean, this is of course just a mock-up with 7 speakers on there. What works better than these speakers, even though these are kind of nice, they're called balance mode mediator speakers, which have dual voice coils behind them, and according to their spec sheet anyway, and I believe it from hearing them, have a wider dispersion pattern. Maybe not as wide dispersion sound field as a real acoustic violin body, but you know, it's not so directional, because normal loudspeakers are pretty like, you got to stand in front of them to get the sound. So balance mode radiators are a little bit closer to the real violin type of sound acoustic emissions. And then this is also, well, the version I'm working on with right now actually has like the speakers are enclosed because you don't get any low frequency response at all when you have a speaker without a box. So it is continued research. But I think that's all I have for now. And I don't